There obviously was on Sunday, we didn't have the complete picture of what was going on.
No, we got an impassioned reaction to Ron's apology.
Right? Yeah.
Ron
Yep.
only.
Yep. And so, listen, I don't know if we could give you a take on what we've seen with the Don Cherry stuff that you haven't seen on Twitter already, that you...
It's already
that would be
jumped.
fresh.
It's jumped the shark that was already jumped.
Right.
When I saw Don Cherry on Tucker Carlson, I thought it was a Photoshop.
Same.
And I waited till I saw the video to announce to the ice surfing room, I'm like, Don Cherry's on Tucker Carlson right now. Mm-hmm. And I got like a couple, and I'm like, no, for real, look.
Yeah.
And a couple resounding, are you fucking kidding me?
No, but he's also been on, he also went on The Rebel. He also
he?
Yeah. He went on 680 News. He went on City TV. He went on CTV. He's just doing the media rounds. And actually, Elliot Friedman mentioned it.
I loved what he wrote at the end of 31 Thoughts.
This is 31 Thoughts. He said, it's very hard to explain the seismic nature of the last 72 hours. We jokingly called Ron and Don the circus when they traveled together because they were larger than life. I won't work with anyone else in my career who commanded the attention and had the profile Don has.
Never.
No, and that's fair. There were a few of us watching together last Saturday, and we were slack-jawed in amazement. The whole thing is sad. There are no winners. The aftershock will continue for a long time, exacerbated by this media tour. And he means Don's media tour. Mm-hmm. I felt horrible.
Oh, Don's making it worse?
I felt horrible for coworkers hurt by it, for viewers who felt targeted by it, and for the ugly, never-ending social media battles for Ron, and for any career to end that way. There, but for the grace of God, I go, is how he ended it. Now, I don't want to really go into the Don Cherry stuff because you've heard our opinion on it. You know how we feel. But I do want to talk about something that I'm seeing and that I believe.
Sure.
I believe genuinely that we are living in a very stressful time. And I don't think that's a hot take. I think everybody kind of knows that. There's a ton of...
I can't help but laugh at that.
There's a ton of social upheaval right now. And I think most of it's long overdue. However, when you have a bunch of social upheaval like this, and if you look back through history, you look at the 60s as another great example of a ton of social upheaval in a very short amount of time. It's like upheaval on rocket fuel. Most of the time, things change over decades. We're talking about a couple years. Like the civil rights movement's a great example. The gay rights movement at the end of the 70s was another great example.
Well, it was building, and then enough people finally said enough.
Right. But beyond the Don thing, I'm talking about overarching here. When you have upheaval like this, you inevitably have two types of people. You've got people that are for the change, and there are people who are sort of afraid of the change. It puts people in a place of fear because the rules of life that they've come to expect and live by and feel like good people by are changing. And it's not just a few rules that we're dealing with right now. We're talking about everything that people were used to, they grew up with it. It could be 60, 70 years on the earth. And by the way, I cannot relate to what it's like to be 60 or 70 years on this earth yet. I don't know. I can tell you 31. And frankly, we are being challenged to change, and we are being challenged to try to be a little kinder. And I want to say this. The response to many people from these changes that we're seeing, the changes are good in nature. The changes are be better to women. The changes are try to understand what it's like to be a person of color in our countries, in our hemisphere. Try to understand the history. Try to understand why people don't feel like they fit into one gender category or the other. Try to understand. But what that does, because all people are asking is please be a little kinder. But that response to that...
That really is it. That really is it.
The response to that is often fear. And that fear leads to vitriol, spewing left and right. And it's frankly... understandable. Like, I understand that in the sense that you have those who fear the change and those who fear will never change enough. And they're both sides. There's people who are leading the charge for the change and people who are like, holy shit, I don't want to change.
Everyone's scared.
What I do want you to do right now is think back 5 years. There are a lot of movements that we've seen in the last 5 years alone that we had never heard of, never even conceived 5 years ago. That
Mike Costco was a leaf.
Well, yeah. The Me Too movement hadn't happened. That's a for instance. There's been many things, but I'm just bringing that up.
Yeah.
Harvey Weinstein was still top of his game at Miramax. You know what I'm saying? By the way, you got to read that book. You have got to read that book. But think of the gigantic leaps forward on social issues we've seen and positive stuff. I'm talking stuff about understanding gender, understanding sexuality, pay disparity, women's rights, how women are treated in the workplace. Massive step forward. And I guarantee you, still lots and lots of work to go. But that was always going to cause a lot of people a lot of stress because nobody wants to believe in their heart of hearts that they are a bad person. Nobody wants to believe that. So your first reaction when somebody says, "Hey, well, that's casual racism," you go, "What the hell are you talking about? You don't know what you're talking about." I've been in it's a fear-based and anger-based reaction, and there are those in our society who are smart enough to capitalize on it. And I don't need to name them, but they are people that go, "There's a ton of people out there who feel in fear right now, and I can take that and I can manipulate those people because the people are most manipulatable." I don't even know if that's a word, when they're fearing things.
Impressionable?
Yeah, impressionable is different. Sure. When people fear things and you tell them, "Don't fear, I've got the solution," chances are, the chances of them being polarized and following you are greater.
Vulnerable.
That's just the reality. Yeah, vulnerable. Now, these people think, we'll keep things the same. And if you've studied history, you know that's just not how it works. Change happens. What I'm hoping to say here, and I know it's long and I've got this written down, and I need to do more of this, but I think we all need to do this. If you can, whatever side you fall on, try to be as patient with people as possible. And I know that is easy for me. I'm a middle-class kid, white kid, to talk about being patient. And I'm not always patient. I'm in fact very impatient. And I'm not asking you to be patient with the treatment. If someone treats you like shit, don't stand for that. I'm asking you to be patient with people's views and changing them because change is really slow. And I'm going to give you an example. And it's going to take everything in your body to be this sort of patient. So one thing that pisses off one of my friends who's gay is that she's got to explain and re-explain and re-explain and explain again and explain some more the various differences between lesbian culture and what has traditionally been straight mainstream culture, and frankly, what's different about male gay culture, right? Female gay culture, male gay culture, different, very, very different. And over and over and over. And like, this is somebody who, it's like literally, sometimes she gets a call from like a news organization and it's like, "Hey, so you're gay, do you want to weigh in on this?" You know what I mean? And it's annoying for her. She handles it beautifully, I got to say, but it's got to be frustrating and it's got to be painful.
In hockey,
please.
Well, whenever something happens with a black player, there's the same group of like 4 dudes they call.
Yeah, JT Brown.
And I've spoken to them, and they're like, they hear the news story, and they're like, "Yep, my phone's been blowing up."
Yeah, of course.
With interview requests because it's my time to shine. I guess.
And it's shitty. Frankly, it's shitty.
Yes.
And it's something that you don't want to do. And it's like this for a lot of people. It's a lot of people who are of different race. There are people, whatever your differences are, the less understood points of view in our society that are finally coming to the surface. Unfortunately, that's going to be a side effect. Because if it affects, say, a black hockey player, you got to ask the black hockey player, although it's annoying. And it's not always the right thing to do. Like, I think when the Don Cherry stuff happened, they basically asked anybody of color in the NHL with immigrant parents. And
JT Brown's wife, Lexi Lafleur, was speaking out about that. And she's like, "Well, he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't."
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, and like Nazem Kadri sort of went to bat for Grapes. And like, what did you expect him to do?
Yeah.
He went in the Hockey Night in Canada studio and got a smooch from the guy. You expect him to blast them?
And he's not going to do that because he doesn't. Nazem Kadri does not want to make news on top of Don Cherry news.
Also,
he doesn't.
The locker room, I don't know if you've noticed this, is not a great environment for nuance. And like, if you're expecting a really deep, thoughtful response,
that's not the place,
man.
Yeah.
Before the game, after the game, you aren't getting it.
No, maybe next summer.
Yeah, it's also just ridiculous to ask a hockey player that question, regardless.
Yeah.
At this time.
How don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what are the reporters supposed to do?
Right. They're doing their job.
Yeah.
And the hockey player's doing their job by giving a non-response.
I guess So what I'm trying to say here,
That's the
and
exchange, right?
This is something what I've gone through. I've gone through from my perspective. You sometimes are, and I was, awoken to things that I may not even have realized were bad. You realize that you could be affecting others negatively and not even know it. And so when you tell people that the first time, they go, "What the hell are you talking about? I'm not doing anything to these people." Right? These people. I haven't done anything to these people, to those people. I haven't done a single thing. But then you kind of say, well, wait a second. What about X, Y, and Z? Have you considered that? Which people did with me, and they were patient with me. And that's how change happens. And it happens slow. It's painfully slow. I was flooded with messages from people who were extremely upset with our portrayal of Don Cherry last episode. Some people, and don't react to this, some people went as far as to call us hateful. And objectively, we were not. But you disagreed with us so much, you're like, that's hateful, and you're putting him in the sewer, and the guy's a legend, and blah, 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 blah. But in explaining, I went through my DMs, and in explaining and re-explaining why I felt the way I did about this particular subject, I don't live the Don Cherry thing every day. It's different for somebody who's a person of color, person, different gender, things like that. But in just this one day, going and explaining and re-explaining was such a pain in the ass. So I can only imagine what it's like for people. I can only imagine. But you start to...
And literally any woman on Twitter.
Yeah, oh my God. This is what I'm talking about, right? You start to give...
There's some accounts where I'm just like, God, this just looks so exhausting.
Yeah, it's terrible. And you give specific examples. And what I found was some just responded negatively and continued to. And it's never, those people are never actually arguing. They're just saying, you're a snowflake, you're a bitch, you're a cuck, you're whatever it is. Some respectfully disagreed and said, I still don't see it that way. And then you had others who started to at least see why people were upset. And I know it's annoying. And I know it's impossible over and over to re-explain this stuff. Why something so obvious to you, you've lived it, you believe it, it hit you this way, whatever it was. It could be Don Cherry, it could be anything else. Why is it so obvious to me, and you idiot, moron, does not understand this is so easy?
Yeah.
But you got to remember that they're coming from a different perspective too. And I think if you can stand it, and a lot of people get really annoyed by it, there is value if you can stay patient enough, and remember, look after yourself first, to try to continue to patiently and kindly explain your point of view. Change is slow, and I got it. The fabric of our society, guys, is changing hugely, very quickly, and there will be divisions. There are divisions, but if we stay as patient as we can with each other, which is something we've all not been good at, we're eventually gonna work our way to a new equilibrium where more people are included, treated fairly, overall happier. I'm looking forward to that day. But then what's going to happen is a generation later, it's going to happen again. It's going to keep changing. And one thing I want to say is with Hockey Night specifically, they have an opportunity right now to take a show, which in my opinion, and I'm just not going to mince words here, has been pretty slow this year. My opinion is that Hockey Night in Canada has not been representative of the majority of hockey fans that I know, that we talk to all the time. I think it represents a certain part of the population. But because it runs on Canada's national broadcaster and it is owned by one of Canada's biggest telecoms, I believe it should represent more. And I don't know what that looks like, but this is their opportunity to have better voices, different points of view, and different age groups. There's an opportunity to modernize this broadcast that has lost touch with its audience, and it absolutely has. We are living right now in a seminal moment for many reasons, and this is a small one.
Yeah, Americans, Europeans,
you don't understand what this broadcast used to mean.
It's enormous.
Yes,
it is enormous, and I've said this repeatedly. The Canada channel, the only channel in Canada from South Park, like that is. It's not totally untrue. It's not totally untrue. CBC and Hockey Night in Canada specifically is that big a part of the cultural fabric. Right.
Or was. And could be again.
What a great way of putting it. Damn.
I think that they have tried to hang on to what they had and then tried a few modernization things. They tried to get Strombo in there. I don't think they introduced him properly. Kind of left him out for the wolves. You know, like you don't just like it's like, oh, we're gonna pull Ron McLean out and throw it to Strombo in. No, what you do is you make Strombo the secondary host and you send him out a lot of interviews, and then you work his way up. When Ron McLean was ready to retire, then Strombo takes in the seat. There you go, right? You don't just go Strombo, everybody. Here he is. What they need to do now is take this season, finish it out, and start planning right now for what next season looks like. This broadcast...
Is this a rebuild year?
This is a rebuild year for Hockey Night in Canada. The panels are smaller. They got a massive studio that they don't use. They're not using the angles on it anymore. They're not. They used to. 5,000 square foot studio, isn't it? Or more?
It's big.
It's huge.
It's big, and there's several... It's several sets, really.
It is. This is their opportunity to get out there. They've got some of those guys. They've got some brilliant guys over at Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi, which I would start with. And go from there. Bring in some new voices, guys.
And that was
Bring
a
in some new
revolutionary
talking
idea.
heads. It was, and it's 25 years old, that idea. Isn't it?
Punjabi's been around about 25, but it's been around for a long time.
The point I'm trying to make
10
is,
years.
and I'll wrap it up. I know this has been long, and I appreciate you guys hanging in here. It is time for Hockey Night in Canada to move on. And what I believe is this broadcast 5 years from now will be far stronger than it would have been had they continued down the road they were going on.